plans for a metro expansion from Birmingham city centre to the new sports quarter to unlock more than £3 billion of private investment in an area with some of the lowest levels of economic activity in all of the UK, with the potential to create more than 8,000 jobs and catalyse the regeneration of East Birmingham and of Solihull. For some people living in some of our biggest cities and towns around them, these measures will mean shorter commute times. They will mean good work and money flowing back into local economies. They will mean businesses connecting with workers, customers and supply chains. They will mean the revival of high streets. They will mean young people able to stay close to homes and pursue the opportunities that they dream of. It will mean more growth, more parts of our country benefiting, and more people and more places across the UK feeling better off. In short, it will mean the renewal of our cities and our towns all across the UK. As we build train stations and tram lines and buses, that will mean orders for steel made here in Britain. 6 weeks ago, this government was presented with a choice: to allow British Steel in Scunthorpe to close, or to intervene in a way that British governments have been too reluctant to do for too long. In opposition, I promised that our economic policy would be guided by what I call securonomics, a belief that an active state should and would take the necessary action to provide security for families and resilience for our national economy. That we would end the days when government turned a blind eye to where things are made and who makes them. And I meant what I said. And so I was not prepared to tolerate a situation in which Britain's steel capacity was fundamentally undermined, in which our infrastructure, our industries, our security became dependent on foreign imports. And I was not prepared to see another working class community lose its pride, the prosperity, the dignity that industry provides. So we intervened. We saved British Steel and the jobs that went with it. And in line with that principle, as we invest in transport for our regions, that investment will support British supply chains. I promised that this Labour government would buy, make and sell more here in Britain, and I meant it. Growth made in Britain, jobs here in Britain, and a new generation of crucial national infrastructure built right here in Britain. What I have set out today is just one part of our ambitious plan for the renewal of Britain, a plan which marks a decisive break with the days when government stood back and shrugged its shoulders, as jobs, industry and aspiration were drained away from so many of our towns and cities. Steps towards a new economic model, driven by investment in all parts of the country, not just a few. That is how we intend to deliver on that promise of change, to make you and your family better off. Next week, there will be more to come. This government promised change, and we are keeping that promise. Thank you. Okay. I'll take some questions now. We start with BBC North West Tonight, Kevin Fitzpatrick.
Hi. So the local leaders will no doubt welcome this announcement today, but you'll be aware that what they say is the big thing which would dramatically... So the local leaders, I'm sure, would welcome this announcement today, but you'll know that they also say that what this northern economy really needs to move things forward and rebalance the economy is new investment in the rail infrastructure, and there's been a big campaign for that commitment that the Tories made before you to build the Crossrail for the North, particularly initially Manchester to Liverpool. So can you commit that that is going to happen, and how much money will be allocated to it next week?
So today I'm able to announce the mayoral settlements, which is a 2.4% increase in the funding for those combined authorities compared to the plans of the previous government for the previous Parliament. That's a substantial uplift, and then they'll make decisions about how to spend it. But as I was really clear, all I am setting out today is those settlements for the mayors. There'll be more to come next week on a whole wider set of investments in transport, in both road and rail, but also in housing, in energy and in digital infrastructure, and also support for our towns and our local places, all of which I know, because I speak to them regularly, are really important to all of our local leaders, including here in Greater Manchester. But I also just want to push back on something you said, that the previous government made these commitments. The previous government made a lot of commitments. What they didn't do is put the money in to be able to deliver them. And that is the big difference about what we are doing. On Wednesday next week, I will be setting out in a spending review where you can see every pound allocated, investment for 3 years for day-to-day spending, investment for 5 years for capital spending. We'll then be publishing a 10-year national infrastructure plan. That is a world away. You can make all the promises you like, but if the money's not there, they're not real. And that is the difference between the hollow promises of the last government and the serious ambition and investment of this government, with our plans not just generated in Westminster and Whitehall, but built up in conjunction with our mayors and with our local leaders, because we believe that the people who represent their local communities, live there day in, day out, know what is best for their local people and their local communities. And that is what is different about this government compared with the hollow and shallow promises of the past. I'll take the next question from Joseph at Manchester Evening News.
Hi. Sorry. Just following on from Kevin's question, I mean, we at the Manchester Evening News have been campaigning for the new line from Manchester to Liverpool, so we hope the reports that it's happening are true. If you won't tell us that you can make a commitment to it today and how much you'll be spending, can you at least tell us what you think of the Mayor's proposal for the new line? And as part of those plans, the Mayors have talked about an underground station at Piccadilly, which would also improve links to your constituency of Leeds. So can you tell us whether that will feature as part of the plans?
Today I'm focusing on the mayoral settlements, not on heavy rail. So today I'm setting out £15.6 billion across 8 combined authorities, which is a 2.4% increase in spending in real terms in this Parliament compared with the last Parliament. And the focus today is on connections within city regions, connecting the towns with the cities so that more people can access good jobs, and we can open up more housing development and more investment across the region. There's more to come next week, but I will set that out in the spending review next week. The next question from the BBC, Alex Forsyth.
Thank you very much, Chancellor. Thank you. You set out this investment in transport projects today, but isn't the reality that next week your spending plans are going to be difficult for some public services? And if you are determined to stick to your fiscal rules, can you level with people about how tough day-to-day spending might be?
Well, thanks very much for your question. As I set out, I changed the fiscal rules last autumn. And those changes to the fiscal rules, and also the difficult decisions that I made, not always popular, to increase taxes on business and also the most wealthiest, the non-DOMS changes, capital gains, private equity, private jets, private schools, that brought in around £40 billion a year. And the result of those two sets of changes, both on tax and the fiscal rules, meant that we're able to spend £190 billion more on day-to-day spending compared to the plans we inherited. And we're able to spend £113 billion more on capital spending compared to the plans we inherited. So overall, the spending review that I will be publishing next week will have more than £300 billion more spending over this Parliament than the plans we inherited just 11 months ago. Does that mean that we'll be able to do everything that we want to do? No. As I said in my speech just now, there are good things that I've had to say no to. The reason for that is because it is important to have control of the public finances. But everyone here will know, I expect a lot of people here have got mortgages that went up in 2022 because of what Liz Truss did to the economy. She crashed the economy, markets lost confidence, interest rates went through the roof, and people that are affected most by that were just ordinary working people who had done nothing wrong but found that their dreams of home ownership were further away than ever, or the mortgages they had taken out in good faith, they were now paying hundreds of pounds extra for. So when I say the fiscal rules are non-negotiable, it's not a matter of pride for me that we stick to the fiscal rules. It's about protecting working people from economic irresponsibility that they pay the price for. So that does mean we can't say yes to everything, but because of the changes we made, both the difficult choices on tax, but also the right choices, and the right choices too on fiscal rules, mean that we have got £300 billion more to spend over the next 5 years than if I had simply stuck to the spending decisions of the previous Conservative government. ITV, Carl.
Thank you, Chancellor. You say you've had to say no to some things that your colleagues and you would like to do. Are your manifesto commitments on policing, housing and energy at risk?
We made those commitments in our manifesto and we stick to them. All of the manifesto commitments that we made were fully costed and fully funded. So using money from increasing VAT on private schools to invest in new teachers in our state schools, using the energy profits levy on the profits that the big energy companies are making to invest in renewable energy, cracking down on non-DOMs so that if you make Britain your home, you pay your taxes here, and putting that money into our National Health Service. So those promises were fully funded, fully costed, and we've raised those taxes to put that money into our frontline public services, which is why we can deliver on our manifesto commitments, including not increasing the taxes that working people pay, the key taxes working people pay, income tax, national insurance and VAT. Sky, Beth.
Thank you, Chancellor. Beth Rigby, Sky News. Chancellor, in the past 2 weeks, voters have heard about big increases in defence spending, a reversal of cuts to winter fuel allowance, potentially lifting the 2-child benefit cap, and they wonder how you're going to pay for all of these additional commitments. The Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, is pressing you for more wealth taxes. Andy Burnham thinks that you should look again at council tax so that people with bigger homes potentially pay more. You've ruled out changing your fiscal rules. Can you be honest with the public that you cannot rearm and do all the rest on welfare with either really deep cuts elsewhere or future tax rises? So do Angela and Andy have a point?
So the increase in defence spending that underpins the Strategic Defence Review that was published earlier this week is funded by a commensurate reduction in the international aid budget. We took that down from 0.5% of GDP to 0.3% of GDP, so we could lift defence spending from 2.3% of GDP to 2.5% of GDP. So that is fully costed and fully funded. And as we've been clear on winter fuel, we will set out how we will fund that at the next fiscal event. We'll set out the funding, or set out how everything will be paid for in the budget in the autumn. But it is important that everything that we do is funded, because that's how people know that we can afford it.
So you're not ruling out tax rises in wealth taxes or revaluation of council houses?
Well, I'm not going to write another 4 years' worth of budgets before we've got even through the first year of this government. But we made tax changes in the autumn last year worth £40 billion so that we could provide that injection of cash into our public services. But the most important thing that we can do to have money for public services is to grow the economy. And that's why we changed the fiscal rules, why I changed the fiscal rules to take investment out of the rule about balancing the budget. And that's what's enabled the £113 billion extra of investment expenditure. And as the Office of Budget Responsibility and the IMF have evaluated, the changes that we've already made around planning will already make our economy bigger, contributing to higher tax revenues, which we can then reinvest in our public services. Next question, if I take Martina from The Sun.
Thank you, Chancellor. With fiscal headroom vanishing by today, can you repeat here your pledge not to increase income tax, VAT and national insurance, and your commitment at the budget to unfreeze income tax thresholds?
I already, in my answer to Carl, said that the commitments that we made in the manifesto not to increase the key taxes that working people make, income tax, VAT and national insurance, are promises that we stand by. We will implement what was in our manifesto. Take the question from The Telegraph from Amy Gibbons.
Hi, thank you, Chancellor. Just following on there from Beth's question, will you consider the ideas put forward in Angela Rayner's memo for the budget, or will you rule them out completely? And do you believe Angela's fully behind your economic strategy? And just very briefly, can you guarantee Lord Hermer will keep his job despite the revelations of the past week? Thank you.
So it's perfectly normal for government ministers to come up with ideas about government. That is what collective government is about. Angela Rayner had ideas around, I think, around £3 billion of tax changes, some of them in housing, which is an area that she covers. But we did raise taxes by £40 billion in the budget last year, much more than £3 billion, and indeed we've unlocked £300 billion of additional spending. We took the tax choices that we needed to provide that initial injection of cash into our public services, which is what has enabled us to spend £190 billion more over this Parliament on day-to-day spending. And then, of course, as I said, the rule around capital spending has unlocked a further £113 billion, so that we can invest the £15.6 billion, for example, that I've announced today for regional transport settlements. The Prime Minister obviously appoints the Cabinet. That's in his gift, whether that's my job or any other job. But I have full confidence in Richard Hermer. Question from Aggie from LBC.
Thank you, Chancellor. Aggie Chambray, LBC. You said last year that the last budget was a once-in-a-Parliament tax hike. Will you repeat that vow today?
Yes, we made decisions in the budget last year to increase taxes by £40 billion. I have absolutely no intention of repeating a budget on that scale again. That budget was absolutely necessary because the previous government left a £22 billion black hole in the public finances, not some year in the future, but in the fiscal year we're in. They had already spent the reserve set aside for genuine emergencies 3 times over just 3 months into the financial year. So I had to take immediate action, both to put our public finances on a firm footing and also to ensure that our public services that had been committed funding, but that money hadn't been made available, to make sure that they could continue to function. I've now drawn a line under that economic mismanagement. People can be confident that our public finances are on a firm footing, and this week I'll be allocating funds based on the budget settlement that we made last year. I've just said that. The question from Daisy at the Times.
Thank you, Chancellor. Sir Mark Rowley has warned that if frontline policing is faced with cuts in the spending review, forces will have to make stark choices about which crimes they investigate. Which crimes are the government happy for police to ignore?
We will be increasing spending on police in the spending review next week, so that's not a decision that, or a choice that I would recognise. Any other questions? Catherine?
Thank you, Catherine Forster, GB News. Chancellor, you refer to people in the North being made big promises that come to nothing. You're here today, but 5 months ago you announced a huge infrastructure splurge based pretty much entirely on London and the South East, the areas that are already doing the best. Isn't it the case that for the Treasury, the North is an afterthought? and also, if I may, more uncertainty about tariffs today, isn't it the case that Donald Trump's vagaries are proving to be the stuff of nightmares for you?
So the announcements we've made today is an uplift at 2.4 times more spending in this Parliament on these regional mayoral transport settlements compared to the settlement in the last Parliament. That is a substantial uplift, which is what makes possible the investments that I've announced today in extending existing tram networks, building new tram networks, new buses, new stations, are all possible because the investment in the North and the Midlands that I'm setting out today. And this is just one part, £15.6 billion, of a £113 billion uplift in public investment that I'm going to be setting out in more detail. And of course, it also comes on top of the investments through the National Wealth Fund, investments in places like Sunderland, which I announced just a couple of weeks ago, in a battery factory for electric vehicles. It comes on top of the commitment to carbon capture and storage, more than £20 billion of public and private investment in Merseyside and in Teesside. So we're committed to growth everywhere. And one, I think, indication that this is not just about one-off announcements, but about a whole different approach, is the fact that we're changing the Green Book. And as said in the speech, it might sound dry, but it's the excuse that government have used for years to say, oh, we'd love to do this, but it's not good value for money. Well, it's only not good value for money because you've written the rules that way. And we're changing that. And we're changing that because that is what our mayors asked us to do. They said they don't want handouts. They don't want a Labour government doing them favours. They want us to take seriously their investment propositions. And that's what the reforms that I'm going to be setting out in full detail next week will enable us to do. So it's not just a one-off decision, this is about a whole different way of doing things. And let me say something about the tariffs. Look, it was welcomed today by UK Steel that we have an exemption on the 50% steel tariffs that Donald Trump is bringing in. They will apply to every country in the world apart from Britain. That is because of the negotiating that Johnny Reynolds and his team at DBT have led, but also because of the work that our Prime Minister has done in building that relationship and setting out the case for Britain with the President of the United States. Now, we have 25% tariffs on steel today, but we've signed a deal, we've done a deal with the US that will bring those down to zero. That is good for British Steel, but it is also good for Jaguar Land Rover and other car manufacturers and other industries in the UK. And we are still the only country that has done a deal with the US, but not just with the US, also with India, which helps many industries, including Scotch whisky, where tariffs have more than halved, and the deal with the EU, which helps our farming sector in particular, but also other parts of the economy. So 3 trade deals, a National Wealth Fund, reforming the Green Book, reforming how our pension system invests in British assets, all with the sole purpose of making Britain better off so we can make working people right across our country better off. Is Jen here from the FT? Oh, yes.
Hello, thank you. We published a story this morning about the Labour Party postponing its latest business engagement event at the last minute. It was due to take place on June 23rd. And we spoke to a number of businesses who've been asked to pay £5,000 a head, who are getting increasingly jaded by constant requests for cash from the party in the name of business engagement. This is the second similar event Labour's cancelled in recent months, and in both cases you were due to speak. Why is Labour organising and then postponing or cancelling these events? And are you trying to use British business as a cash point? Thank you.
I think that it's well known that I regularly meet British businesses in my capacity as Chancellor, also as a local MP, and when I'm on visits right around the country, as I am doing right now at this great bus company here in Rochdale. So look, I don't think that is a valid criticism of me as Chancellor that I don't spend enough time with business. I go around the country every week meeting with businesses, but also meeting with working people who are the lifebloods of our economy, and also meeting with smaller businesses who represent around 90% of our economy. So, I'm proud of the relationships that I've got with businesses and with working people. And I think, you can see that in the announcements we're making today and the support that they have from the business community, but also working people, the trade unions that represent them, and mayors that represent their local areas. I'll just take a couple more questions, then we'll have to wrap up. Yeah, lady there.
Thank you, Chancellor. Sophie Huskisson from The Mirror. Pensioners are waiting anxiously for details about changes to winter fuel payment eligibility. Will we get them in next week's spending review? And if I may, another quick one. Will you have to increase defence spending to 3.5% of GDP over the next decade to keep Donald Trump on side and keep pace with NATO? Thank you.
So I had to make decisions last year to restore sound public finances, and that involved a number of difficult decisions around welfare, taxation, and also public spending, including the decision to means test winter fuel payments, so only the poorest pensioners, those on pension credit, got it. But we have now put our public finances on a firmer footing. The economy is in a better shape, but we have also listened to the concerns that people had about the level of the means test. And so we will be making changes to that. They will be in place so that pensioners are paid this coming winter, and we'll announce the detail of that and the level of that as soon as we possibly can. But people should be in no doubt that the means test will increase and people will get, more people will get winter fuel payment this winter. On the question about defence spending, that we've set out a fully costed, a fully funded plan to take defence spending to 2.5% of GDP within just 2 years, and we will take defence spending to 3% in the next Parliament. Of course, that's got to be dependent on economic and fiscal circumstances, but we are already, and we will set out more detail of that increase to 2.5% in the spending review next week. Final question, yes, lady there.
Hannah Al-Othman from The Guardian. Chancellor, how much of a priority is tackling child poverty given that the strategy has been delayed? And do you share Keir Starmer's hope that you'll be able to scrap the two-child limit that has been described by Gordon Brown and many others as cruel?
So that is a cap that we inherited from the previous government, and it will cost, I think, just over £3 billion to reverse. And I have been clear that we won't make spending commitments without being able to explain where the money is going to come from. But this government is determined to reduce child poverty. It's a moral mission for this government. It's why we have already started on that with the rollout of the first breakfast clubs from April at primary schools. It's why we've put more money into childcare so that more parents can work more hours to balance work and family life and put more money in their families' pockets. But every Labour government has reduced child poverty. We are determined to do so as well. The Child Poverty Task Force will be reporting in the autumn, and then we'll be setting out further plans. Thank you very much for being here today and for your questions, and thank you to the leaders of the Council as well for coming.